All right, so we have just a couple of things to do today. One, we need to top our engine oil off. After that, we need to pull our coolant overflow tank, drain that old coolant out of it, rinse it with some water, and put fresh coolant inside. Bolt that back up to our bike, and then we need to top our radiator off with our fresh coolant and purge the cooling system of air bubbles. After that, I said we need to prime our engine oil pump a separate way, and to do this, we want to turn our engine over, but we don't want the bike to actually start. So what we'll do is pull the ignition fuse from our fuse box. Hopefully that will prevent it from starting, and then we'll crank the engine over. Once the engine has built oil pressure, we'll shut it off, and then we'll throw the rest of the bike back together, and then finally start this thing for real. And hopefully we have no noises. So it's been a long time waiting. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, now we added a couple quarts already, so we don't really need too much. We're almost to the max line. I'm just gonna put maybe a half quart or a quarter quart in. I expect once we prime everything up for the oil level to go down and us to have to top it off again. But for this right now, I'm just gonna put it up to the max line. That looks to be pretty close to the full line, as you can see here. So next we need to get our overflow tank out of here, and to do this we're going to pull off our passenger seat. That way we can get our driver's seat off, and then I'm going to pull this bolt, and then there's a little push pin thing that I'll pull loose and pull this cover out of here, and then it'll give us a pretty good access at that bolt right there, if you can see it. All right, so I don't know how good the light's going to be. Hopefully it's good enough, but let's go ahead and start off by getting our rear seat off. So there we go. There's a lever right here where my finger's at, so we'll pull that. Now I want to pull off this, so I'm going to remove this screw. And then this should just pop off of here, I believe. I don't want to break it though. Yep, all right. There we go. So those are the little push pins I'm talking about. Push right in there. And that gives us a nice little view of the bolt we're after right here. Hopefully that's in camera. All right, so we're gonna need a 10mm to get on that. I got one with the extension on here. Try and do it without hitting my subframe because I don't want to scratch it. And I believe this is the only bolt holding it on. It might have like something on the side of the frame here that's gonna, like it pushes into. All right, so we have it loose. Let's get the bolt out of here. And let's pop the cap if we can. Okay. And then there is, if you can see down in here, there is a rubber line as well that connects to this. It should just pop right off. There is definitely limited space in here though, I will admit that. I don't know if the camera can see that, but it's just a little grommet that's holding it on. It's just really stuck in there, so definitely gonna need a tool to pry it out of there. There we go. Yeah, buddy. All right, now let's see if we can sneak it on out of here. We do have that other hose still stuck. These snap-on pliers are amazing. They're 3-way adjustable, so you can go really wide with them. Great for pulling out like relays and fuses. They actually have a little indentation in them specifically for fuses, so it's kind of nice. Might use that later. All right, let's see if I can get on that. All right, guys, so I got it out. It was super easy to get out once I got the hose off of this part of it. I've already rinsed it out with water. There was kind of some dirty looking stuff in here, so like I said, I've already rinsed it out with water. I'll show how it goes back in just because it's super easy. It came out super easy, so really that was the only thing holding us up. It took me a little bit with some pliers coming in from the back side and also using a long flathead screwdriver to pry the hose off, and then yeah, then we were good. I'm going to apply a little bit of that silicone brake grease that I have to this plastic piece just to help it slide into place, because I don't really want to fight anything going back together. So, all right, I found it. So I was going to use this putting the water pump back in, but it was the wrong stuff. It'll work just fine lubricating this, so it'll go into that rubber grommet in the frame, and then hopefully it'll slide nice and easy into that grommet. I am gonna add a little bit of our coolant to it just because it's gonna be kind of hard to add coolant while it's in there. So I'm gonna top it off and put it to the fill mark right here. So the coolant we're gonna be using is this engine ice stuff. I've used it in previous bikes, it works good. We'll see if the bike actually runs any cooler from it, because apparently it's supposed to run a little bit cooler. So I don't know, I thought this bike always ran hot, but again, the water pump may have been going out. We know for sure it was making noise, but who knows, maybe its function was not as efficient. So, try and do this without spilling, oops. All right, we're probably a little bit over the full mark, but it's not gonna be that big of a deal. Hopefully we don't spill it going in, so that's gonna be the challenge. Now that should be enough to help us slide that grommet into place. So as I said, it slides in pretty dang easy. Just tilt it to the left a little bit. All right, I do not want to spill any coolant though. And it looks like we're probably going to. I'm gonna try and cover this hole while I do it, because that's where the coolant's gonna come out. Gotta get it past. Once you get it past that little rectifier or a computer or whatever that is, then it's all smooth sailing. Alright, so we're almost in there. We got our cap that's in the way. I'm gonna pull that up now. Place that into the reservoir. Get it at least started. Let's push it into place. I think I'm on it. All right, there we go. See, the lube definitely helped getting it into place. I'll say that. Now we need to get the pain in the butt hose, which I don't know where it's at. It's somewhere in there. Now, I'm probably not gonna be able to see this part very well, but I'm gonna get this hose onto here and then get this clamp in place. So I'm actually not gonna film that part just because it's a lot easier to do it without that, but I'm just showing you what I'm doing right now. So we'll do that, then we'll get our bolt in here, and then we'll be good to go on this part. As you can see right there, I got the hose on and the clamp in place. It was pretty easy from the other side, so I probably could have filmed it, but let's just go ahead and get our bolt in here now. Get it started by hand here. Go ahead and tighten this up the rest of the way. All right, now that it is nice and snug in there, let's make sure our cap is on all the way. As you can see, we're exactly at the full mark, so that worked out perfectly. The next thing I want to do is pull off this black cover right here so we can get access to our radiator cap a little bit easier. So let's first pull these ones off. Hopefully I don't have to take it off the stand to get at these. I don't think we will. Get on it just enough. Now I think, honestly, I've never taken this off, so I don't know if that's a thing. If it comes apart, yes it does. All right, I figured it would. Now we have pretty easy shot. As you can see, the radiator is pretty much all the way to the top. Once we start it up and run it, that's gonna drop down, so we'll have to add more to it, but for right now, we're gonna leave it like this. And what I want to do now is pull out our ignition fuse. That way, when we go to crank this over and build oil pressure, the bike doesn't start on us. It's really hard to get the cap off while it's actually attached to its bracket here. Right here, there's a little tab that you can press, and that will free the bracket to the fuse box, so then you can pull it out. So as you can see, it's just that tab right there. So now we can pop it open. And if we look at it, it looks like the second fuse down, our 15 amp fuse, is gonna be our ignition fuse. Get my trusty snap-on. And it looks like the battery is dead. Or that is for our actual ignition, which then means that the bike won't turn on. So let's put that back in and see if that is the case, because if that's the case, then we're not gonna be able to, from what I can see, pull a fuse to prevent this bike from starting. All right, now let's see. All right, so that was the issue. Now I don't think I can see a relay in here or anything that's gonna prevent us from getting this bike started. The only thing I could think of would be to pull the tank up and disconnect the fuel injectors or the ignition coils. All right, what I think we're gonna do actually is disconnect our crank sensor. Our wire runs up here through and up underneath towards our gas tank area. So if we can find where that connects and disconnect that, that should eliminate all of our spark, keeping our engine from firing. That way we can crank it over and hopefully build that oil pressure. We're gonna have to pull the black cover on this side, it looks like, and then I think you have to pull this cover off, and then there's 2 more bolts on the side maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I've actually never taken this gas tank off, so let's go ahead and start with what we know. Hopefully this switch isn't connected to anything, because I really don't want to have to pull any wiring. I don't know what's going on in this bike. I've never had this off, so we'll start with pulling these. I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds like Air Force One's flying overhead. Let's see if we have any wiring connected to this piece over here. No, we do not. Nice. All right, cool. So I could really pull that switch, but then there's going to be a hole in there, so And did our other side not have that bolt? Oh no, it does. I believe that pops this plastic piece off, and I think there's 2 bolts underneath here that we need to get, maybe? Yeah, let's find a good safe spot for this. That looks like as good a spot as any. Okay, now we need to get these bolts off, which are actually what hold the tank on. This one, this back one, and then the one on the other side. All right, that should be good enough. Let's prop our tank up here. We should have enough room to prop it up. It's got a K&N, guys. Stop. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's crimped. Almost flat. As long as it flows fuel, we should be fine, but why they would design it like that, I don't know. But hopefully we're all right. Okay, let's try and trace our wire here by kind of wiggling it. Okay, That's the wire right there, which makes our connector this one right here. Let's see if we can get that disconnected. Looks like just a push style pin. Okay, now let's go ahead and see if we can crank this over. Hopefully it doesn't start. Alright, our battery is getting weak. And I don't know if we got any oil pressure because I did not see an oil light. Doesn't look like our oil level dropped too much, maybe a little bit, which would indicate we are flowing oil. Yep, battery is dying. This thing's been sitting for some time. All right, I do think maybe our oil level dropped a little bit. I could put a battery tender on this to give it a little extra juice while we crank it over. Always make sure you hook up to the correct terminals. Positive with positive and negative with negative. Otherwise, you risk blowing the main fuse, which I was talking about earlier. If you get lucky, you blow the main fuse. Worst case scenario, you fry a bunch of components like your main ECU and other stuff. So always be aware of where you're hooking up. We'll let this sit for about 30 minutes, then we'll come back out here and try and turn it over a couple more times. Then we're gonna reassemble everything, and depending on how late it is, we will either A, wait till tomorrow to try and actually start this thing and see if we fixed anything, or we will piss off my neighbors. All right guys, this has been charging for about a half hour now, so I'm gonna power it off and then let's go ahead and crank it over a few more times and just see what happens. All right, that cranked over super strong. Let's see if we have any oil being moved around here. Okay, that definitely looks lower. Okay, so look at how low it is right now. Before it was definitely up here at least. Yeah, let's go ahead and crank this over a little more. I like how strong that was turning over, so that's good. So the battery's definitely charged up. All right, that was pretty long. Oh yeah, look at it now, how low it is. So yes, it is definitely building oil pressure, and that is exactly what we wanted. I'm gonna crank it over a couple more times. So I topped it off so we're pretty much at the full marker now. I don't know if you can see, keep setting a code 12 here, which I believe is for that crank sensor being disconnected. Let's look. So it did drop down a tiny bit more, nothing crazy. Let's try and turn it over one more time for a little bit and we'll see where we're at. If it doesn't drop too much more, then we're probably good. And I think we'll be good to throw the rest of this back together, and we'll still have to bleed the cooling system of air bubbles, but we'll at least be able to start this bike up and run it and see if we fixed our issues. All right, that should be enough. Yeah, it didn't drop too much more, if at all. I actually see it rising back up now like the oil's draining back down. So I think we're actually pretty good now. We need to reconnect our connector. I'm gonna show you that now while I'm holding the camera. This is the connector. It's a little 2-pin that goes right here. There's that, and that is what runs our crank sensor right here. Or that is the connector for our crank sensor right here. And like I said, if you disconnect that, it'll cut off all of the power to the coils. So anyways, that was a quick and easy way to do it. Instead of having to get down to all of our ignition coils, which would be pulling off our box here and everything, or getting to our fuel injectors, which would be pretty tight of a fit. So also I'm gonna show this fuel line here if you can see it. It's pretty kinked. Actually, while I was letting the battery charge, I just decided to go ahead and order up one of these fuel lines just for peace of mind, because if this were to go at any moment, I mean, it's gonna be dumping fuel all over the engine and that could easily cause a fire. So I probably won't make a video on replacing that. All right, you're not gonna really be able to see it. First, I'm gonna reconnect that connector for our crank sensor. We're definitely connected. That connector is kind of loose just in general. I don't like that, but it is connected, so hopefully we don't have any issues with that. If we do, we know a code 12 is your crank sensor. So yeah, I do not like how crimped that is. So hopefully when we shut this down, it straightens out a little bit. Start everything by hand first, and then we'll go back through and tighten everything down. All right, guys, so the camera overheated and died, and by the time I realized that it had overheated and shut off, I already had the bike back together. So we won't start the bike tonight because it's about 11 o'clock at night right now, but tomorrow, right after work, we can go ahead and start this thing up and finally see if we fix this thing. So I'm super excited. Hopefully I can sleep tonight. So we'll go ahead and disconnect the battery, and we will let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, come back and reconnect it, and that should give the modules and computers enough time to drain their voltage down, and that should clear out our 12 code and our check engine light. So if they all reach, it's always good to touch the cables together. Well, the bolt's not long enough, but I was trying to thread it into that hole to hold it in place. But they're disconnected, it should be okay. We should still be able to get rid of the charge and clear our code here. All right, so let's go ahead and let this sit for about 10 minutes. Then we'll come back, reattach it, and we'll check if our code is gone. All right, looks like we have both terminals fully tight. Let's go ahead and see if our code is cleared. And no, it still says 12. I wonder if it will clear if we try to start it. I don't want to start it right now because it's so late, but tomorrow we're gonna have to try and start this thing and see if that clears the light. The computer must have it as a hard fault and it's stored in the memory. So maybe once it finally sees the signal, then it will clear. Or I said that connector felt like it was kind of loose, and hopefully that connector is not bad and it's just not fully connected, and maybe that's why it's doing it, but I don't know. So looks like we're gonna be on a cliffhanger until tomorrow, so guess we're gonna call it a night. See you tomorrow. All right, guys, it's still nighttime. I couldn't live with that outcome for tonight, so I went ahead and put the seats on just because I was, I don't know, feeling a little down. Put the seats on, and then I came over here and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try something one last time. So I turned the key on, it still showed the 12 code, and I was like, well, what if I just try to crank it over real quick, one quick little tap, what will happen? So I did this. And that was all we had to do to clear our code. So the computer must have saw that the signal was there and it cleared the hard code right away. So to clear that code, if you are doing the same thing, all you gotta do is just crank it over and it should clear the code on its own. So unfortunately, that time is wrong. It's close though. It's about 12:10 at night. And unfortunately, I can't fire this up in here because it's gonna be too loud in this garage, plus so many fumes, and I just don't want my neighbors to hate me. They probably already do, so I don't need any more reasons to have them hate me. Anyways, so tomorrow we will finally find out if we fix this bike, so stay tuned. All right, guys, it's the next day. Let's go ahead and get this bike turned around, and we'll get the exhaust faced out the garage, and we'll get it back up on the stands, and we'll go ahead and finally fire this thing up and get the cooling system bled, but also find out if we solved our issues. So let's go ahead and get this bike turned around.